to confirm with a reaction or anything that folks can hear us on the line?
If folks could press the raise hand button to confirm that they can hear us, and then you can feel free to come back and then lower the hand.
Okay. Looks like folks are good. Great. Before we do get started, I just want to flag we are planning to record this. So just so folks know, this will be recorded. If for any reason you don't feel comfortable being recorded, you can drop and we can follow up separately. But Mary, if you can go ahead and start that for us, we'll kick it off.
Recording is started.
Perfect. So as I mentioned, my name is Addie Koslerich. I'm a senior communications manager for Pepco. Appreciate everyone jumping on here to hear an update just about the work Pepco's completing to address some challenges at our 22nd Street substation in Washington, D.C. Just a couple quick housekeeping items before we start. So we are joined here by Sam Williams, who's our Vice President of Transmission and Substation, as well as our Director of Transmission and Substation, Nigel Rosser. They will give some opening remarks, just kind of giving some detail of what's happening on the ground, where we are, and some of the work our crews are currently doing. From that point, we'll then open it for Q&A. What we will do is have folks go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question. We'll unmute you one at a time, have the question asked, answered, and then go to the next one from there. I'll be helping kind of moderate that Q&A with teams. But other than that, we'll go ahead and dive right in. So Sam, I'll pass it to you to kick us off, kind of with where we are from that standpoint.
Yep. Good afternoon. I'm Sam Williams, as Addie mentioned, Vice President of Transmission and Substation here at PHI. I've been with the company 31 years and at PHI 5.5 years. So thank you all for joining us today. So first and foremost, just to acknowledge the fact that these outages have been taking place in our service territory as of late, and we acknowledge how disruptive they have been, especially since we've been having some days with some hot weather. So I know that can be disruptive to our families, businesses, and the rest of the community. We've got a lot of heavy equipment out there, a lot of people out there, a lot of foot traffic. So we're just trying to be mindful of that fact that this is causing a little bit of disruption to our stakeholder groups. But we are committed to restoring service as quickly and as safely as possible. Like I said, a lot of people out there, you have community in close proximity. So as we try to move as quickly as we can to restore normal configuration, we do want to keep in mind that we need to take safety first and foremost when it comes to our people and our customers and that are in close proximity. But that being said, you all know 7 days ago on the 15th, we did start to experience these underground equipment failures right at our 22nd Street substation. A lot of the surrounding system assets started to feel some of the impacts of that, and it's caused us to also have a fire at the substation. So these are things that we've been fighting towards repairing and getting back to normal configuration. This is a transmission system, so these aren't quick undertakings as if it was a distribution system. These things take time as big pieces of cable, $1 million pieces of equipment. So this is pretty extensive and complex operation that's going on. Our crews, as you all have noticed, they've been there working around the clock 24 hours. We have company crews, we have contractor crews. From time to time, there could be dozens of people there at the job sites, whether they're the crews that are performing the work or the flagging folks that we employ to help with traffic control. We have some of our government external affairs folks out there that walk around and try to meet with customers and the like. So, a lot of, people out there, a lot of vehicles, a lot of interactions, there. So 24/7 operation that's been fully functional and, just trying to get us back to normal configuration. I said a little bit there, but my colleague, Nigel Rosser, he's Director of Trans and Subs here at PHI, and he can, lead us through a couple more technical iterations of what occurred. So I'll turn it over to Nigel.
Thank you, Sam. Again, I'm Nigel Ross. I'm the Director of Substation and Transmission Engineering for PHI. I just wanted to walk us through what happened on, I guess, a more technical detail. So as Sam stated, on July 15th, we lost 2 of our underground 69 kV feeders that run along 11th Street. This resulted in us losing 2 of the 4 transformer supplies that we have out of the 22nd and N Street substation, sub 124. From that, we began to initiate contingency planning. Those contingencies included mobilizing equipment to the substation, as well as mobilizing underground crews to repair the feeders. In addition, we mobilized generation to help with some of the load. As all of those activities were going on, unfortunately, we lost a 3rd supply at the substation, resulting in that fire that Sam was referring to. Because of us losing this 3rd supply at the substation, we had to proactively shed load at the substation to prevent an overloaded situation on that 4th transformer. In the event that we would have had an overloaded situation on that 4th transformer, it would have caused us to lose the entire substation, resulting in many more outages for that entire network group. We recognize how impactful it is for customers to have to take outages, especially sustained outages. We don't take it lightly at all. In addition to that network group, the 2 network groups that we dropped, we had to drop customers on other network groups to proactively avoid any type of additional cascading electrical outages as a result of this situation. I want to turn it over to where we are today, how we stand. So as of today, we were able to successfully get that 3rd feeder back into service, resulting in that 3rd transformer being energized at the 22nd Street substation. We have over 50 crews in the street, 2 electrical COCs, contractors of choice, 1 civil COC, contractor of choice, as well as flagging and internal crews working around the clock to restore those 2 feeders along 11th Street. We also brought in additional generators to help with the capacity and load shedding, with the load peaking that we're seeing at the substation. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Sam for him to go over what you can expect, or what our customers can expect in the next couple of days.
Thank you, Nigel. So hopefully that was helpful to you all, getting a little bit more, technical understanding of the complexities and what happened. We do anticipate, remaining the restoration to take, anywhere from, a week to a week or more. And the reason I say more, we started off, we had a general idea of what we thought could be a best case scenario when we could get back to normal configuration. But because a lot of these assets are underground, as you're pulling cable, as you're going into manholes, you're digging holes, you're uncovering the extent of some of the damage that was done to some of the assets. So as we uncover things, that time frame could potentially creep and turn from, a week and a half or so to, multiple weeks. One of the key things that Nigel talked about was the fact that we did get that 3rd transformer back in. And so that gives us a little bit of a buffer to have more support with only having one, instead of having only one line in, right? So that's a good thing for us. We will be coordinating closely with the district, any of the emergency management officials, trying to make sure our residents, particularly our seniors and folks that have medical conditions, have access to the support that they need. Until then, there is a risk of temporary service interruptions, but we will do, whatever we can to reduce that risk and limit the impact. Nigel talked about that a little bit. Sometimes, when the conditions change, the heat may increase, things of that nature, we may need to do proactive measures to protect that last feed that we have in. So sometimes load shedding is a part of that. Our teams, we are committed. We're going to try to be as transparent as we can be, as responsive as we can be, as safe in, every step of the restoration. I talked about that a little bit. We do provide daily updates. We're going to, try to utilize best practice, learn from, things that maybe we haven't done to the best of our abilities when it comes to some of the communication and, provide better updates to our customers, media, and local officials. While our crews are continuing to work, we're encouraging our customers in the area to conserve electricity whenever they can. That could be anywhere from, when you're not home, maybe turning off your air conditioning, or when you are there, instead of having it on, say, a setting that you normally would like, turn it, down, maybe turn it up a little bit to conserve some energy, turning off lights, turning off appliances, things of that nature, doing some of the more load, high energy, intensive tasks in the evening when less people are using those same type of doing those same type of activities can be helpful as well. They're small things, but those few things help us out with preventing getting to a point where, load shedding is needed. We talked about the fact that the event was the result of multiple failures on this infrastructure, which is aging. So the mission is pretty clear about what we want to do. We want to repair the system, but we also want to build it back stronger and put safeguards in place so, when we have a situation like this again, it's mitigated as much as possible while we're taking advantage of the fact that we're addressing some of the aging infrastructure at this point. Finally, I want to thank the communities that we're serving right now for their continued understanding. I know this is difficult for a lot of them, and we acknowledge, the fact that it is difficult. I do want to, shout out and the effort that our crews and our contractors have been putting in thus far, working around the clock, long days in the heat as well. So it's not good for them either. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that they're trying to restore service as quickly as possible. And as with any event, we're just going to keep working until we get this thing resolved, try to build it back a little better to avoid any of this happening in the future. So with that, I'll turn it over to Addie for next steps in this process.
Great. Thank you, Sam. So from this point, we will go ahead and take Q&A. So I do see we have, I believe, Mariel Carbone. We can start with that question. Mary, if we can have them unmuted.
Can't hear anybody.
Yeah, I don't think she's unmuted yet.
Mary or Reggie, are we able to start unmuting our first question there, Marielle?
Yeah, one moment. Apologies.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now if you guys can hear me.
We got
Yep.
you.
Okay. I had just a clarifying question and then two clarifying questions if I could, and then a more in depth. But just to clarify, so there were 4 transformers at the substation. 3 went down. It sounds like 2 are now back up. So are we just waiting on 1 more transformer to be fixed? Is that accurate?
So, yes, you are correct. 2 transformers went down as part of the initiating event. Then we lost a 3rd transformer. We were able to get the 3rd transformer that we lost back. We have 2 now, so we're waiting on 2 additional supplies that feeds both of those other 2 transformers that went out initially on July 15th.
Okay, so those 2 that went down on July 15th is what you guys are still working to repair.
That is correct.
Okay, and at this moment, are any of the areas or any of the power sources out right now for people in the area, or is everybody on right now?
Everybody is currently on.
Okay, and my last question, you guys mentioned that there could be disruptions to service over the coming weeks or so. So is there anything you guys are planning to do as far as like letting people know before you guys pull that down? Because that seems like a complaint from people in the community that they didn't know the power was going to be taken out, and then maybe they were on the elevator or something like that.
Yeah, and so we're cognizant of how that played out when we have opportunities to plan outages and let customers know ahead of time. We have processes and procedures in place to do so, and we use those channels. In this particular situation, just to give you an idea of what you talked about with the transformers being out, when we have two transformers in, we have enough load to feed the capacity for all of the customers on that network, right? So we're in that two transformer configuration. That's not where we want to be. We want to have all four because you have all kind of redundancy built in. But when you get down to two, that's when it's like, okay, if one goes out, you're in a kind of a little bit of a bad situation, right? And so you want to act quickly to get that second one back up. What happened on the second one is when it goes out, you have to take a quick look at the amount of load that is being asked of by the customers, right? That demand. And if that demand gets close to what that last transformer and feeder can provide, you have to quickly make a decision, right? We can't let that last transformer and feeder pop and go out because then we're in a totally different situation, right? So it's kind of one of those things where, hey, you have a failure on that second one and you have to immediately make a decision to say, hey, we have to shed some load is what we call it. So that means just dropping, unfortunately, some section of customers to keep the load level down. And so that's why it's hard to be proactive to tell people when something like that can happen. But what our plan moving forward is to do is to, be mindful of situations when those things occur. And when they occur is when the heat, goes up. So days like today and tomorrow and such, they're not as bad. You're in, I guess, like the 80s and things like that. So the demand isn't as high. But when you start to get into the 90s, up near 100, demand starts to increase. And then that's when you could face challenges where we have to take some preventive measures.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
that,
And just
hopefully
to,
that answered the question.
yep, just to expand a little more on what Sam said, and not really expanding, just, explaining, how much of a benefit it was for us for the third supply to lose when we lost it. At the time that we lost the third supply, the 3 different times, all of them were in times in which the load was low enough for us to be able to make those proactive measures to turn additional load off, to not incur a transformer overload on that fourth supply. If it had happened when the load was a lot higher, that opportunity wouldn't have been there, and we could have potentially lost the fourth supply as well.
Thank you.
All right. The next hand I see is Liana Golden. Are you able to unmute Liana?
Yes, can you guys hear me okay?
We
Yep.
gotcha.
Great. Okay, thank you guys so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. My first question would be, I believe the original estimate that there could be some rolling outages was through the end of the month, which is July 30th. It sounds like it could be possible up to multiple weeks though. So what's the timeline here that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, kind of like what I said, right? That's basically driven on information that at a point in time, right? So based off what we know at this time, as we're trying to, make the repairs, we feel as though that timeline would be good, right, up to the 30th to get everything back into normal configuration. However, like I was saying, these folks are working underground. They're in these manholes. They're testing the cables. There's processes where you're pumping these oil field cables with oil to see kind of like how they hold, if you have any leaks. Can we get all of the moisture and contamination out of those lines that have the oil in them? Because that's a requirement before you put the line back in service. So as you go through that evolution of repairs, you find things out. You may find like, hey, we thought this piece of cable was going to be good. Now we know this piece of cable isn't going to be usable. So instead of, performing a repair that may take, I'm just giving a ballpark to say 2 days, you may say, man, we're going to have to replace this run of cable now, right? Some of these runs of cable can be, 2 football fields or something, right? And you're pulling that through manhole and it's big, heavy lead cable. And so that could tack on extra time. But those are things that we're learning as we're coming across more issues that we see on the ground, and hopefully we just cross our finger and we've run across as many of the issues we're going to run across, and then that doesn't add on to the timeline. But if the timeline does move, trust me, it's not because it's something that we're not being transparent about or something that we know and we're hedging bets. It's because, hey, in real time we found out something and that changes the dynamic. And that's the last thing we want. Yeah, that's the last thing we want for sure. But it's just a reality of what happens and when these type of significant events happen.
Gotcha. So just so that folks can be clear, so they can be prepared, it is possible that these outages could go past the end of the month. Is that true?
Yeah, and it's not so much outages per se. Like the outages are dependent on if we were to lose a third feed. If we don't lose a third feed, this thing still could go, a couple of weeks and past the timeline. But it would be because the work that we're doing on the first two feeders that are out, right? But have nothing to do with outages. But along the way, if the third feeder that we have in, right, that's supporting that main one that's been in since day one, if something happens on that one, that's when we run the risk of, hey, system overload, we have to do something to shed some load, and shedding load means taking out a subset of customers.
So right now, do you guys have any of those planned outages for customers on the books, or is that still to be determined?
No planned outage. Every outage that will happen will be as a result of something occurring on the third feeder and us having to take preventive measures so that we don't lose the fourth feeder.
Okay.
But no planned outages.
And in that event that you lose the third feeder, how quickly would you be able to let folks know that you lost it and they may be without power?
Well, it depends on the nature of the failure. It depends on what we see, and it depends on what the loading is at the time. We are actively working on 5 different contingency plans that in the event that we lose that third feeder, similar to what we've seen over the weekend and last week, that we can quickly and and restore those feeders as quickly as possible. One thing that I wanted to mention about the previous questions asked, a lot of the restorations that we see in this area are overhead restorations because of storms and other things. You're able to see all of the overhead infrastructure. When dealing with underground, like what we see in these 69 kV feeders, a lot of unknown variables until you get down and start making those repairs. So initially, you can anticipate it taking a certain amount of time, and then you get down and some of those unforeseen variables materialize into something different than what you thought it was going to be.
Great, thank you. And just one last question for you guys. Some customers were a little bit concerned about those generators being provided to commercial buildings that maybe weren't in operation over the weekend or didn't have as many people inside of them versus residential buildings. How do you guys determine where those generators go to commercial versus residential?
So the way we determine where generators are deployed is we work with our capacity planning group as well as our operations control center to see where the best placement of that generator is to shed some of the load off of the substation, but ultimately not overload the transformer. Another factor that comes into play when placing generators is the type of feed that the customers have. Certain transformers we cannot tie generation to, and unfortunately we've seen is a lot of those transformers are tied to that residential load.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up for the question around how quickly we communicate to customers. I do just want to emphasize, our full emergency operation teams are working around the clock. So we're very connected, with our operations side. So as soon as we know those outages are happening, we are looking at how can we make sure we're notifying customers as quickly as possible of where that is and taking that step there. So we'll continue to work, very closely with our operations teams and customer operations, as well as, our external affairs and others to make sure that that information is shared as quickly as possible. I thought we might have had one other hand, but I don't see it up any longer, but I'll pause just to make sure there's no other questions in queue. Again, if you do have a question, please just raise your hand and we'll bring you off mute. While Liana's go back up. Do you have another question?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just had one quick one. We just heard that the traffic lights may be still out at Lincoln and R Street Northeast for several weeks. Was wondering if you guys were able to clarify if it's Pepco related or DDOT. We were just, some people were concerned about that.
Well, we can't confirm if it's Pepco or DDOT at time, but we can confirm that it's not a part of this 22nd Street network outage. It's not related to the situation, but a lot of the street lights are controlled by DDOT, worked by MC Dean, and not controlled by Pepco. But we don't have the answer at this time if it's a Pepco or DDOT street light.
All right, I'll follow up with the team.
Leona, you said Lincoln and R Street Northeast?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll check on that and I can get back to you separately.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right. Not seeing any other hands, so we'll go ahead and close it out there. Appreciate again. Thank you, Nigel and Sam, for joining and providing some overview here. And thank you to our media partners for being on. And again, we will certainly stay connected as things continue to evolve with our substation here and other changes or things as the work continues. So thank you again all, and we will talk later.
Thank you, guys.